They'll lynch you, but he did, and he laughs at
No, Slade, I said you are a different cat. You're a different cat of fish.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the West Ham Network. We are on the cusp of bringing in our first signing of the summer. As we've been reporting over the last couple of weeks, we've done some stories on him in the past, but the situation is as follows. Edson Alvarez from Ajax is looking extremely likely that he will be coming to West Ham this summer in our first signing of the current transfer window. But yes, it is Tuesday, and we kick off our campaign in the Premier League on Saturday. Too little, too late? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see once the player does come in to West Ham. Now, we are expecting Alvarez to be completing his medical today, preferably sometime this morning, and hopefully by this evening be announced as a new West Ham player. The Mexican international who has made over 140 appearances for his current club, Ajax, will undergo his medical and complete a switch once all the personal terms and everything has been agreed, and West Ham will get the player to sign on that dotted line, and we will see for the first time this season how West Ham will announce a player being signed at West Ham. Now, I am excited about this player. There are no ifs or buts about it. Let's just take a little rewind back about the player. Alvarez was subject to a bid and a target of Chelsea back in the winter window. They decided to go and smash their transfer budget and bring in Edson Fernandez instead. Now, Alvarez, for me, is a no-brainer. He gets stuck in. He is no holds barred. He is relentless in his approach to chase down the ball. He bridges that gap between the defence and the midfield. He is a replacement, you could necessarily say, for the man that should not be mentioned, but we've been lacking, and we shouldn't really be even close to mentioning him. We're still mentioning him because we haven't replaced him. That's the problem. And bringing in Alvarez really does that. You know, our Mexican midfield maestro. And that's exactly what he will offer to West Ham. And he will be the start of West Ham's revamp in the middle of the park. And this will make for interesting decisions moving forward. But the key reason why I wanted to bring this video to you this morning was, is this a good deal for West Ham? Because if you think about what problems are going ahead and what problems you're hearing about with in terms of the leaks and where the leaks are coming from. So if you think about David Sullivan as the owner of the club, and he's got good ties to Jacob Steinberg from the newspaper, and the stories that come out from there, you can't help but think that David Sullivan reads over those stories. Maybe he feeds the stories into the media. And that makes a mockery of the situation that's actually currently going on. You're hearing the Moyes versus Steiden situation, and that's at a standstill because they don't agree on their approaches. You've got Moyes looking at Premier League experience with the bids going in yesterday, £30 million for Maguire, that we understand. I think they'll may put the negotiations on the table with regards to that, and also a £30 million bid on the table for McTominay that's been rejected already, versus Steiden, who looks for a young up-and-coming dynamic prospect in Europe. So you're linked to Alvarez's, you're linked to Fofana's and players along that sort. So bringing in Alvarez is not blatantly a David Moyes signing. So what does that mean for a player like Alvarez? Will there be assurances that he's going to play? I don't think there will be. But what does this do for the future of West Ham? What does this do for the future of David Moyes? Does this put the pressure on? Are we expected David Moyes to play Alvarez from the start? You know, he's had a preseason under his belt. He is fit and ready to go, but he's never played in the Premier League. But this will make for interesting viewing, you could say, because what will this do for the tensions in the camp between Moyes and Steiden? And what will this do in terms of the hierarchy? Because we all know that Moyes, you know, whether you're pro Moyes or anti Moyes, he is stubborn. We know that. We know the way he builds teams. We know the way in which he develops a team, and if he brings in new signings, we all know that he likes to give that signing time to bring them into the team and develop them in his manner and his style. And the situation with David Moyes being forced with the player in his hands doesn't really bode that well, doesn't sit that well with me. So I'm excited about Alvarez. I'm just a bit concerned, not overly excited. I'm just a little bit concerned at how West Ham are going to manage this situation, because Stuyden is going to be an Alvarez boy. Obviously, Moyes will have a say, and there will be some form of agreement or disagreement, etc., with regards to the player. But what does this mean for the future of West Ham? I mean, is he happy? Is David Moyes happy with the situation at the club? I'm really not sure. If I'm being really honest, it's hard to look in from an outsider's point of view and think that he is happy with the ongoings. He cannot get a deal over the line for a player that he's looking for with Premier League experience. And again, we find ourselves on the 9th of August, only a couple of days away from the Premier League season starting, without bringing in a recruit. Will Alvarez even remotely feature in the game on Saturday against Bournemouth, or will we be stuck again with the typical starting lineup, the most predicted lineup you could say? There are going to be elements of players throughout the park that I'll be intrigued to see who starts. Goalkeeper, forward, for example, considering we did sell Scamacca and Antonio came back late from the pre-season. Again, you're hearing links about him heading out the door. But the Alvarez deal is an interesting one, because that could open the floodgates for West Ham in making more signings. It's a coup for the club. You know, another big signing coming from Europe, playing for a big club, Champions League experience. And that could really allow the domino effect to fall and more players to come through our door. But what level are those players going to be? You know, we're hearing West Ham are interested in up to 6 or 7 players coming through the door. Alvarez definitely ticks the boxes of what we're looking for. Young, dynamic, hard-working, gritty, fights through his teeth, puts his heart on his sleeve, decent on the ball, can progress the ball, can score goals as well. That is a very good situation for West Ham. That pushes West Ham forward. That pushes our situation forward. And we need to look at the situation where we can bring in other players that Moyes or whoever the manager will utilize. That's the concern. That's where my concern lies. Who utilizes the player? Who's brought him in? Who's the final decision? Will Moyes be pissed off? Will he give him the opportunity? He needs to give him the opportunity. It needs to be a gentleman's agreement. We need to understand from the fan base what is actually going on at this club, because with brutal honesty, nobody knows. And all the information we're given is sometimes conflicting, and nobody really gets it. We need to be given the facts. And I understand that you can't get exact facts. I get that. But someone needs to speak out and say that there's some form of unity at the club. You know, you're hearing reports about some changes in the mindsets of the players in the dressing room. They're not necessarily too happy about the way that Moyes is setting up the team. But we need to know that there's a similar clarity throughout that squad, a similar mindset throughout that squad, so we know going into the Premier League season that they're ready. The communication coming from the club has always been crap. It's never been great. Or essentially, you know, if they have never been given the information, and it's ridiculous amount of leaks that's happening that's creating this hysteria between the West Ham fans. But, you know, either way, what we do need is the West Ham fans to be on side for the game on Saturday. Remain positive as much as we possibly can. It's better late than never bringing in signings. I just hope that bringing in Alvarez is the right decision for him, and also the right decision for West Ham, and the manager, whoever the manager will be, which is probably going to be David Moyes, utilizes him to the best of his ability, and we can avoid again another situation, which is what we're doing with our forwards when it comes to players like Scamacca and Haller and Anderson. When we're not giving them a chance and we sell them and not make any profits and they don't be a success at the club, we have to come away from that mindset. We have to come away from that approach into a season, approach into football, and become what you could say is a professional football club. We certainly don't act it off the field, and again, without being a fly in the room, you can't help but come to your own conclusions, and we probably all agree on those conclusions that what is going on behind the scenes. Let's get this shit resolved. Let's hope that Alvarez comes in, gets hits the ground running and really adds value to that first 11, because I think he does, and he's an exciting prospect for us. Let's hope Moyes gets on board with it, and let's hope Steiden gets on board, and we can actually now finally move on to the season. I know people are going to be saying, "Oh, I want Moyes out, I want Moyes in." Well, listen, either way, support the club. That's who we are. That's what we have to do. And fingers crossed we can go and get a result against Bournemouth. Take it easy, everyone. And of course, come on, you beautiful irons. Join me later on, obviously, because I'll bring you the Hammers headlines and the official announcement, hopefully, of Alvarez joining the club. Take it easy.